Okay, Ford F750 haul truck build. As you can see, I'm over here at the truck firewall. What I wanted to show you was the steering column. This is steering box. That steering column is out. I finally got that steering column out and never got the steering wheel off so far. So I am very close to being able to pull this cab. What I have to do is, this is the vacuum lines that were for the brakes. Vacuum line off of the engine supply, and this went down to feed a vacuum advanced system for the brakes, or not a vacuum advanced, but a vacuum booster for the brakes. So I have to pull this off because the vacuum booster is connected to the frame, not connected to the cab or chassis. It's connected to the frame, so I've got to get this off. These are the brake lines that go down to that cylinder. There's like another master cylinder down on that vacuum chamber assembly, vacuum assembly chamber that is connected on the frame. These brake lines go to that line lock type of thing that I've showed you before in the cab, where I found a line lock, and I'm going to connect this. I'm going to leave that line lock in there and hook that up to probably the front brake, so that I can have my parking brake, which is going to lock the rear wheels, and then I can have this line lock and lock the front wheels. So when I'm putting pieces of equipment, driving pieces of equipment up on the trailer, it doesn't try and move the truck back and forth. So vacuum lines have to come off. These brake lines have to come off. Now these lines go to that drive shaft disconnect. For the existing original transmission in this truck had a PTO, and there's a drive shaft disconnect. So to engage the PTO, what you would have to do, and I'll bring you back here and show it to you, this is the drive shaft disconnect. So what you would have to do is disconnect the drive shaft. So the drive shaft would spin in the front, but it wouldn't. It would be disconnected, wouldn't spin the rear back to the axles. So to engage the PTO, you disengage the drive shaft, put the transmission in fifth gear, and it had a let's not call it a cruise control. It had a hand throttle cable on it so that they could boost the engine RPMs up to, and I'm assuming that what that PTO drove was a pump, a fire pump for the tanker. So you would boost the engine RPMs up, disengage the drive shaft, engage the PTO, and put the transmission in fifth gear, and you would be running the pump. So those things have to be disconnected, just so that you know that that's that brake vacuum assist brake system. So I get them things disconnected, and I can pull the cab off, and start getting the frame prepped for painting, prepped for engine mounts, stuff like that. So I'm going to throw clips in here. There's some clips of me working on the cab. I do not have a video of me actually getting the steering column disconnected, but there is clips of me working on the cab. But as you can see from the shop, the engine and transmission are gone, and what I'll do is I'll delve into that in more clips here, so I'll bring you back. Okay, so over here at the rear end, Just decided as I was passing by to try and work on that a little bit. Got the outer bearing off, about ready to take the hub assembly off for the rotor. Hopefully. What I'm going to do is make a spot up on the bench to set this up on there and work on it. Okay, so what happened here is I got two of the bolts out with a 1/2-inch impact wrench, but it would not take the rest of them out. So I had to go to the 3/4. Came right off. That's cool. Okay, so as in previous videos, you saw that I got that rotor off and the hub off and a part. I went down to my local Napa store and they had a rotor in stock. Now I also asked them for the inner seal on the thing too. And when I came back, I was doing some other things here in the shop and I went to look at this inner seal, and the one that they gave me was too big. It was way too big in diameter. Now, I'm kind of baffled here as to, sorry, you weren't in position. I'm kind of baffled here as to what to do on this thing. Most parts stores go by reference numbers of the vehicle. You tell them the vehicle, they have a reference number for it. If you don't know what the vehicle was, and again, this rear axle was either out, I was told it was either out of a 2004 or 2005 F750. I know the axle, I know the axle number, the model number, I actually even know the serial number of the axle, but parts places don't reference that. They reference make and model of the vehicle. So I'm kind of stymied as to what to do here. They said, well, pull the seal out and we may be able to match it. Well, if I pull the seal out, it gets destroyed. If they can't match it because either they can't match it or match it because it's been destroyed, well, for me taking it out, it's not going to do me any good. So I guess what I have to do is figure out a place that sells seals. If I can't, I gave him, there is a number on here, and I gave him that number and it didn't show up as being anything. But if I had a seal reference manual, maybe that would help. So I guess the search is on for something else now. And the same thing with the bearings. He said when he pulled up the 2004-2005 F750, he didn't find anything for bearings as them having bearings. So I might have to do the same thing with the bearings, is find a number on the bearing and reference a bearing catalog to see if I can get that. So again, like I said, my search is on. I just wanted to show you this bearings for the rear end. I was able to get the bearings even though I haven't gotten the seal yet. I was able to get the bearing because off of the old bearing I got a manufacturer and I got a number. So that's the outside bearing, and I'm not really sure if you're going to be able to see this, and let me get a light on it. Inside bearing, same manufacturer, you see it right there, Timken, and the number is over here. So what I was able to do is get the number, and my parts supplier was able to match that. Now I still haven't found these seals, but I'm still working on it. I actually got an email into Spicer, Dana Spicer rear ends, and I gave them the model number and the serial number of the rear end to see if they can help me with the seal. Bring you back. So trying to keep this as brief as possible. Why the engine and transmission is gone is I had gone down to that salvage yard, that truck salvage yard, and he said to me, take measurements on the bell housing or the flywheel housing off of the engine and the housing off of the transmission, and tell me what sizes they are, and then give me the model number of the transmission. So I did that, and I went down there. I went down there at the end of May. I get down there, and the guy says to me, he says, well, can you bring the engine and transmission down? If we had them down here, I can put them in my shop, and if we had them down here, that way we can assure that what we get is going to fit. So I said, yeah, I can do that. Now, you got to understand this place is probably about 20 miles away from me. So I go back, and this is where we're going to start. We're going to start on me getting preparations to move the engine and transmission down there. So off camera, what I did was I pulled the gear off of the P-pump. I've also taken the head off and taken it over to the workbench. I'm going to pull that P-pump off right now. What I'm doing is prepping the engine to take down to the salvage yard to the engine and transmission. And I'm taking it down to the salvage yard because the guy down there wants me to bring the engine and transmission down, let him store it so that he can find the correct adapter, the bell housing adapter, transmission bell housing adapter, to fit between this engine and the transmission that I've got. So I'm doing this for, it has to be torn down, but also I'm doing it to so that I can facilitate getting the engine down there. What I'm going to have to do is form it up on a skid, get it onto a skid, and stabilize it, both the engine and transmission. The transmission is sitting on a skid, but what I'm going to have to do is stabilize both of them so that I can throw them in the back of my truck and take him down there and let him have them for a little while he finds the correct adapter plate. A lot of stuff has to go into it. The distance from on the shaft sticking out of the transmission, I'll take you over there and show it to you, but the shaft sticking out and the shaft lining up with the flywheel. Now, as you can see from that flywheel, that's not the correct flywheel. That flywheel is probably for an automatic transmission, and I'm gonna have to get another flywheel. So get a flywheel that will adapt into that flywheel housing, bell housing, and then get an adapter for the transmission that will adapt to this bell housing. So as I said in the previous video, here is the head. It's over on the workbench. I've kind of reorganized the workbench to get it ready, but so I have to get an adapter. This bell housing, transmission bell housing adapter has to come off of there, and the correct adapter has to go on. This bell housing is different in diameter than the bell housing on the engine, so I not only got to get the correct size, but I've also got to get the correct distance so that it makes the it's the correct distance out away from the end of the flywheel. Sorry, I was thinking of something while I was doing that. I was just looking to see if that clutch brake was in there, and yeah, it is. Clutch brake is well, I'll explain it later. Okay, so if I haven't told you, no, what I've mentioned this in other videos, other video clips, so I'm not sure whether that clip is going to go first or this is going to be the new clip. The last time that I went down there with the measurements for the engine housing and the transmission housing, he told me it would be really helpful if I could bring the engine and transmission down to him and let him set them in his shop down there so that he can have the engine and transmission there to reference so that he can adapt or find that adapter housing. So that's what I'm going to do. I've got the engine on the skid, and I'm going to be putting it on to the truck along with the transmission so that I can take it down there, and he can keep it for however long he needs, like a week. I'm assuming it'll probably be about a week. He'll take it down there. He'll have the engine and transmission down there, and he can get an adapter housing that fits from this to the transmission. Now, as you've probably seen in other videos, the transmission is already skidded up. It's on that pallet right there. Now I'm going to take the shifter lever and that boot off of it, but there it is. It's all ready. So I'm going to set that on there, and then set the transmission or the engine up in it. It's going to be a lot of weight in the truck. Between this, and even though the engine is fairly bare, we're still probably looking at a ton and a half probably. So I'll bring you back when I get it loaded. Okay, hopefully you're not getting blown up by the light of the garage door, but here's the engine and transmission loaded in the truck. So I've got airbags on this truck, and that's probably why it's not dipping down way too much. I mean, it is down, but as you can see from the springs, there's still a curve in the springs. Okay, I'll bring you back. I'm gonna try and take you down there and be able to show it to you. Okay guys, this video is getting too long, so I'm not going to show you any of the cab work. I left you off with the engine, transmission in the truck. I'm going to show you a couple of clips from down there. Now, I don't want to, I would love to be able to film the inside of this office just so that you could see it and be as amazed as I am. The guy that I deal with, and the place is called Casey's Salvage Yard, and it's Casey that works the counter, the parts counter. This there is an office with a couple of women in there that do bookkeeping, and let me tell you why I say bookkeeping. I'll explain that to you after I explain Casey. Casey works a parts counter, and when you walk into this place, it looks like a paper factory exploded into his office. There is sheets of paper stacked, and this is no joke, in some cases 2.5 feet high. And when I'm saying stacks of paper, I'm talking about like notepad paper. He does not have a computer at his desk. Casey is fairly old. If I was to guess, I'd say probably 80. Gets around very good, and the guy is just a walking encyclopedia of trucks. I'd love to show it to you, but I don't really want to take a camera in there and film it. I don't want to embarrass him. The guy is a great guy, and I really don't want to embarrass him, but I'd love to be able to show it to you. But anyways, make a long story short, this video is getting way too long. I go down there with the engine like he told me to, in transmission, with the intention of leaving it there, and I get there and he says, well, he puts me off to one of his other employees, and this guy comes out and he says, I probably might have one right here. You know what I mean? So you probably we don't even have to take the engine transmission out. And I'm thinking, I went to all this trouble of loading this thing, and you're not even, you just walked over and looked at it and said it's a number 1 and number 2 housing, and you just need to adapt to a number 2. And but so I got there about 9 o'clock. I never left that place until probably 10 minutes of 12. I expected to just go there, show him what I had, he would unload it and get the parts for me. But they started dicking around thinking that they had the parts right there, and they probably do have them right there. This place is huge, and if they have a section where they have diesel engine, well, they've got a bunch of sections where they have diesel engines, but the main section where they have diesel engines, if they have one engine laying on the ground, they probably got 500. And the entire place is like that. They've got trailer loads of fuel tanks, trailer loads of radiators, trailer loads of everything. But anyways, at first he said, well, we're not going to take it off. I don't really want to take it off and leave it here. And I'm thinking, why'd you tell me that then? So, but anyways, make a long story short, they finally ended up taking it off because they are a transmission rear end rebuilding shop too. Engine, everything truck. But he wanted to go through that transmission for me just to make sure everything was good on it. That it shifted properly, that everything, the selector works fine. So I left it there, and he's going to do that. And they're going to come up with a flywheel, clutch, and the housing adapter for me. So What I'm going to do is, I did take the camera. I was walking around looking for some things, and I did take the camera, so I'm just going to show you 2 short clips of things that I'm looking at down there. Maybe next time that I go down, I take the camera with me, and I'll get a more detailed view of this salvage yard. So anyways, after the clips, the 2 clips I'm going to post, that's going to be the end of this chapter 18. So hit that like button, guys. Subscribe. I might be looking at these fuel tanks. There's this one. Yeah, I don't think it could be polished out, but, and then this one, they're identical. Well, the same size, let me put it that way. So the other thing I might be looking at is that sleeper. I'm just looking, so I can't, you're not allowed to go walk through the other part of the salvage yard that has a lot of stuff in. They've had liability claims, and they don't want people walking through it that got sued. So right now I'm just looking, but gonna keep this in mind. I get you over here, the workbench. I just wanted to show you the filter. This is the oil filter for the A3. I have to tell you, it's pretty expensive. But what I wanted to do is, I just wanted to show you a comparison. This is a filter for my 6.7. Show you a comparison between the 2. Filter is pretty big and expensive.